Okay, we're being live streamed as well. That's exciting. Undergrad students. Yeah, don't yeah, I totally understand you there, Kelsey. We have the same thing here. I think we generally think of 18-year-olds maybe as being adults, but quite often they're more like teenagers, aren't they? Well, they are teenagers. Asma is teaching adults. Okay, great. So there's lots of things here for adults and young adults today. It's mainly focusing on teenagers and adults. So all of the activities you can use in your classes. Okay. So I can see, and teenagers, okay, yeah, Ali, I know that teenagers in particular, I teach teenagers a lot as well, and sometimes they're not so motivated to write. So hopefully the activities I'm going to show you today will be useful. Okay, so let's get started. Let me just, can you make me co-host, please? Because I'm not host anymore. I can't share my screen. If you can just make me, Dahlia, I don't know if you can hear me. If you can make me co-host so I can share the screen. Okay, thank you very much. That's great. Okay, so let's have a look. Okay. So for those of you who have just arrived, hello, I'm Lucy and I'm speaking to you from sunny South Italy, a place called Reggio Calabria. And this is the place where I've been teaching English to a wide range of ages, actually, teenagers, adults, children, for the past 20 years. And I'm really excited actually to be doing this workshop today because it's a very practical one. So you'll all be able to get involved to try out the activities and get to know each other if you don't already. Because we're going to be doing some activities. We'll be doing probably 3 activities in breakout rooms. And also in the main room, I will ask if you feel happy to come onto the mic. You don't have to switch your camera on if you don't want to, but you can come onto the mic if you feel happy doing that at certain points. And something else is that you will also need a pen and paper today. So if you don't have a pen and paper, if you want to rush and get one now, because you will need it for some of the activities today. Okay, so I would like to start actually with a question for you all to answer. I've got 3 questions actually, but let's have a look at the first one. So here's my first question. Why do we do writing tasks with students? Why do we teach writing? Okay, so what I'd like you to do is put your answers in the chat. Why do we give students writing tasks? Okay, and put your answers in the chat box. To know their level. Yes, Renal, that's a good point. So we can use it as a form of assessment. It's a very, very good way to see what level they are. Yes, good point. Okay. Any other reasons why we give students? To gauge comprehension? Yeah, Kelsey, that's a really good point. So we want to know, do they understand something? Great, a writing task is a great way to find that out. Any other reasons why we give students writing tasks? To allow them to express themselves. I really like that, Kelsey, and I think that's extremely important, especially now. Okay, so we have a lot of focus on academic subjects in schools, so STEM subjects, maths, also maybe their own language or English. There's a lot of focus on this, and sometimes there isn't a lot of opportunity for students to express their creativity. And having a creative outlet, especially in stressful times like now, with a pandemic and things going on all the time, it can be really good to have a creative outlet, really excellent for their well-being. So I really agree with you there, Kelsey. I think that's a very important one. And to produce a target language, Ali, yes, absolutely. In fact, I'll be looking at some ways that writing can help us review grammar and vocabulary that we want the students to learn. And in fact, yeah, minor enhance their vocab. Exactly. We want to really get them to build on that, increase their range. And Rodina, yeah, to give them feedback on content or accuracy. Yeah, because there are those two parts to writing. They could be writing perfectly, but if they're not completing the task, if they're not answering the question, it can be a big problem. So some great ideas there. Thank you very much for your ideas in the chat. They were much better than the ones I could think of, actually. And Emma, yeah, recycle what they've learned. That is so important. And Magda, thank you, to teach students to organize their ideas, develop points logically, and make explicit connections. Brilliant. Thank you so much. Now, here's another question for you. How do students feel about writing tasks? So here you might want to think about how your students feel, or you might want to think about how you feel or how you felt as a language student when you were given writing tasks. So you might want to differentiate between the students you teach. So maybe, teenage students feel differently to adults. There's no right or wrong here. So just write what you think. Renal, yeah, it depends on the topic. That is a very good point. And we'll be looking at the importance of choosing the correct topic later on in the session. So any other thoughts on how your students feel? Your students struggle, yeah. The audience not clear or connected, the purpose can feel inauthentic. Yes, absolutely. This is a really thing. That inauthenticity, it reduces their motivation to write, doesn't it? Yeah, we're just doing it for the sake of writing, for practice. Yeah, they feel that they haven't got any ideas. Oh, yes, I really hear that, Marianne, because my students are the same. They don't like, what can I write? I don't know what to write. So they do struggle with that. Yeah, and Shaima also, they can't find the ideas. Ali, I agree. They feel that writing is challenging, and maybe because we don't really do a lot of the kinds of writing that students might be asked to do, for example, in exams. They don't really do it in real life. They're kind of writing things on social media, short things, but essays and things like that perhaps aren't so common. Yes, the mechanics of writing, organization, it's so important, Magda. Yeah, they're afraid of making mistakes. Good point. Yeah. Difficulty to do task requirements, absolutely. They often have the ideas but not the language to express them. Okay, so this we've seen also that even if they do have the ideas, maybe they don't have the actual language to be able to say what they want. This is a very good point. Yeah, Reynolds students need to relate so they can think of ideas. They don't know how to brainstorm ideas first. Absolutely, brainstorming is such an important part of the planning process of writing. Okay, so brilliant ideas there. Thank you so much. Now, we're going to, today's very practical, as I said. I'm going to show you some ideas that will work with a variety of students, those who love writing, those who groan as soon as you mention a writing task. But first of all, I'd like to find out a little bit more about the kind of tasks that you give to your students in your classes. So here's my third and final question for you. What kind of writing tasks do you give to your learners? So an example could be an essay for an exam task, but I'm sure you give many other types as well. So what kind of writing do you give to your learners? Formal and informal emails. Yeah, good point. And there's actually formal and informal. So register is a really kind of tricky thing sometimes. We might have students that have learnt English, or they're interacting with English through things like YouTube and social media, and they come in to write an exam task and a formal email, and they're suddenly writing it with very informal language. So yes, it can be, register is a big thing there as well. Opinion essays, yes. Blogs, yes. Persuasive essays, doing a course focusing only on job applications. That's really interesting. Very, very important to be able to express yourself well in a cover letter, and to be able to use the right kind of style as well. Short essays, opinion, argumentative, yeah, descriptive and narrative essays. Yes, definitely narrative can be tricky as well, finding the ideas there. Paragraphs and emails. Yeah, paragraphs are really important, aren't they? Sometimes, you know, students don't realize that they need to separate their ideas into paragraphs. Lower level writing about themselves, exactly. So we're going to have shorter texts at the lower levels, maybe just, you know, sort of factual information about a daily routine, an opinion essay. Good. So there's so many different types of writing that we might be looking at. And I think it's time we got started with some practical ideas. Now, if you remember the title of the workshop, it is about using writing tasks to practice grammar and vocabulary. So language that they may have learnt, but they still need to put it into use. And all of the tasks today can include some lexical or grammatical focus, or an extension activity which practices them. And we'll be covering different types of writing tasks, starting with the kind of creative writing, narrative writing, in particular stories, and moving on to exam tasks and other kinds of writing later in the session. So let's get started with the activities. Now, first off, we're going to be doing a bit of brainstorming for vocabulary, and somebody mentioned brainstorming earlier, and this is a really good habit to get the students into, especially before they do something like an exam task. Okay, just get them thinking about the topic and the kind of vocabulary that maybe they need to use. Now, the topic that I have chosen today is space, because today is actually International Day of Human Spaceflight. So I chose the topic of space today. Okay. Now, what you can do this on your phones or on the computer. If you have a QR code reader, this is the QR code, or you can simply go to menti.com. You can see the address at the top and enter the code 73882076. Okay, and I'll give you a link as well in case that's easier, which will take you directly to the website. Now, you will see 3 boxes. So it looks a little bit like this. If you're doing it on your phone, you'll see 3 boxes for you to write words or phrases associated with the topic of space. Now, once you've written them, you click submit, and you can do it again if you've got more than 3 words. The more words, the better. Okay, now all the words you write will form a word cloud, and we'll take a look at that while it's developing and see if we can make a really big word cloud. So just one moment. Oops, sorry, I've done that. Okay. Oops, sorry, I'm just trying to. Okay, great. So let's get that up there. Brilliant. Wow, you're so fast. That's great. So yeah, we've got loads of words there. Now, the words that are, if you haven't used Mentimeter before, just to tell you that the words that are the bigger words are the ones that more people have actually submitted. So we can see that, you know, stars, galaxy, spaceship, planets, they're all popular words there. No gravity is good, isn't it? Meteorite, dim atmosphere. There's some fantastic vocabulary here. Really, really excellent. So yeah, wow. Ultimate, I like that. Nebula, wow. Okay, we've got some really great vocabulary here. Space shuttle. Gases, quietness. That's a good word, isn't it? Okay. Wow, brilliant. Really, really good. Okay, so astronauts as well. Yes, thank you, Mara. Okay, great. So we've got loads and loads of vocabulary there. Brilliant. Now, what we're going to do is I want you to take either a screenshot or a photograph of this screen, okay, because you'll need it in a moment. So take a screenshot or a photograph. You will need that vocabulary for the next activity. Okay, so okay, now hopefully everybody's got a picture of that now. Okay, and let's move. Oops. Okay. So just 1 second. Try and there we are. Okay. Okay. So fantastic word cloud. Got loads of vocabulary. Now we're going to write a story trying to use as much of that vocabulary as possible. Okay, so I'm going to put you into breakout rooms. I'm going to give you 6 minutes in small groups in the breakout rooms to write a short story, a very short story connected to the topic of space. Okay, your challenge is to use as many of the words in the word cloud as possible. Okay, now I will try to share the word cloud also to the breakout rooms, but hopefully you also have your own copy that you took a photo of. Now, the winning group at the end are the group who has used the most words in a coherent story about the topic of space. Now, please bear in mind that I will ask you to tell me how many words you have used. And if you're happy to do so, maybe one of your group can read your story as well, so we can check how many words you did use and whether they were used correctly. So maybe you want to nominate somebody when you're in your breakout rooms to be able to read the story afterwards. Okay, so let's get the breakout room set up. So just 1 moment. Now let's put you into, okay, let's have, okay, so I'm going to put you into groups of 6, actually. So we'll have 7 groups of 6 people, just because maybe some people won't be able to come on mic or camera. So hopefully with 6 of you, there'll be enough to create a story together. Okay, and let's put, how long did I say? 6 minutes, didn't I? Okay, so we've got 6 minutes. You'll be able to see the timer at the top of the screen. Okay, and here we go, off to the breakout room. So 6 minutes to write a story using as much of the vocabulary from the word cloud as possible. Here we go. Okay, so welcome back, everybody. Okay, so I'm going to ask you, one person from each group, to write in the chat, how many words did your group use? Oh, good, Aya, I'm glad. How many words did your group use? I wonder who's the winner. I wonder who used the most. So just write in the chat how many words you use. Oh, we've got 8 words. Brilliant. 13. Wow. And look, we've actually got a story in the chat as well. That is excellent. Okay, great. 15. This group's got 15. Wow. 18. Oh, it's going up. Tahib and Habib have both got 18. Oh, we're going to have, has anybody got any more than 18? Did any groups do more than 18? Okay, so I'm going to ask, let me just find which group. So we have Tahib and Habiba, you're both in the same group. Would either of you like to come on mic and read your story? If you would, just click to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me well?
Yes, Habiba, I can hear you perfectly. Okay, we're ready for your story. Everybody else, listen. Are you sure they used 18 words? See if you can count them. Okay.
You have used 19. You have used 19. You have counted them again and we used 19. Yes.
Wow, fantastic. Okay, so if you're ready, Habiba, let's hear this story.
Okay. Have you ever traveled to space? You can see the ultimate galaxy. There is no gravity. The solar system is wonderful. You can see the Milky Way. There are a lot of gases as well. You can see the whole universe from over there. You can travel using space shuttle with the company of some astronauts. Don't believe people who say don't believe people who says that there are aliens. There is only quietness. It's amazing. You can rest in a spacecraft. You can hear the explosion of the asteroids. They are really beautiful. You can return back to the space station. You can roam around in your spacesuit and enjoy the no gravity. There are a lot of satellites in the space. You can enjoy the darkness of the galaxy. And the only thing that shine is the moon of the Earth, something like this. Okay, that's
Wow, congratulations. That's brilliant. How did you do so much in 6 minutes? Fantastic. So really good story there. And thank you so much for reading it, Habiba. That was great. Really liked it. Okay, so let me just share my screen again. Here we go. Oops. Okay, so this activity, I think it works really well because you add a fun element of challenge. And I mean, you know, somebody mentioned earlier they were working with teenagers. Teenagers love a challenge, don't they? So you could say, you know, I bet you can't use 19 words. So there is a little bit of competition there if you want competition in your class. And it's also practicing a really important stage of writing, which is the activating the topic related vocabulary in the brain before you start to write. So you might want to do that with a topic that you've recently studied. So students are recalling the Lexis, and the fact that the word cloud to brainstorm vocabulary was collaborative means that students might also be learning new words from their peers, or looking them up in a dictionary and then putting them into practice in their own writing, which perhaps makes it even more memorable because the students are creating something with the words. And we know that create is at the top of Bloom's taxonomy. So they're really using these higher order thinking skills. Now, with that activity, the words in the word cloud came from the students. But we might also want to choose some words for students to include themselves. So, for example, we can give the students some pictures to inspire them. Now, the activity I'm going to show you now, although we won't actually do the writing part today, this involves choosing some images which represent vocabulary that you want the learners to revise and use, because you know, they do say an image is worth 1,000 words. And I would say it can inspire 1,000 words. And images are a really good way to get students to recall vocabulary and then put it into practice in their writing. So here's an example of some images that I gave to an A2 group because I knew they'd have difficulty remembering them. And the idea was that students needed to use the words for the images in their story or whatever piece of writing I was giving them. Now, what I normally do is I tell them that, for example, I have written a story and it contains these images or the words for these images. And first, I ask the group to predict what they think will be the relevance of these things in the story. So they use the modals of deduction like might and could. Well, the pineapple might be something that the mechanic eats, for example. And then I put them into groups to write the story. And the winner is the group whose story is the closest to mine. So I usually get them to read their story. And then at the end, I read mine and they can compare them. And we can actually make this even more challenging if we want to get their brains really working even harder. So I'm going to give you another activity now. This is really going to get your brains working. So I hope you're feeling nice and awake. I'm going to show you 20 images and I'm going to show you them very quickly. Okay. What I'd like you to do is to try to remember as many of the images as you can. Now, please do not write anything down while you are seeing the images, okay? But when you see the word finished, then you can start writing down what you can remember, okay? So 20 images, don't write until you see the word finished, okay? So let's begin. They do go quickly. Okay, so you can see the word finished. Now write down all the words you can remember. But don't put them in the chat, just write them down on paper. Okay, now what we're going to do is I'm going to put you into breakout rooms again. What I want you to do is to create a piece of writing. Now, it can be a story, it could be a poem, it could be a letter, it can be any type of writing that you want to do. And what you have to do is to try to use as many of the words that for the images you saw as possible. Okay, so very similar. We've got, don't put the images in the chat though, that just yet, because that's we want you to see which group can remember the most. Okay, So I'm going to put you into breakout rooms. Try to use as many as you can. The winners will be the ones who use the most. Maybe one group can even get all 20 words in. The important thing is that it is a coherent piece of writing. Okay, now I'm going to give you 7 minutes to do that. Okay, so let's put you back into breakout rooms. You might be with different people this time. Here we go. Okay, so welcome back, everybody coming from the breakout rooms. Okay, so if you can, again, type in the chat how many of the words from the images you used in your writing. How many did you use? So put it into the chat. 19 again, Tai. Wow. 19 is amazing. Can anybody beat 19? Does anybody have 20? 12 is good. All 20. Aya's got all 20. Wow. Marie, 15. Yeah, you've got great memories. Okay. So I think we'll go with room 2. Is there anybody from room 2, from Aya's room, who would like to come on mic and read their story? Tahib's saying he hasn't got 19, he got 20 now. Okay. And anybody from room 2 or from room 1 who would like to read their story? Okay, Renal, Nora, 12 is okay. I think it's good. It's more than I could remember. Okay, so I don't think room 1 or room 2 would like to read their story, but that is fine. We will believe you that you used all 20 words. Now, probably those of you who didn't get all 20, who couldn't remember it, I'm going to show you again the images so you can see which ones perhaps you didn't remember there. So let's have a look at the presentation again. Okay. And here we go. I shouldn't really put a cake, should I, in Ramadan? This is not really fair. Sorry about that. I didn't think. "17 lines, Tahib, is good. That's really good. That's a lot." Okay, now the good thing about this activity, it can work alone as a vocabulary activity because you're not just asking students to recall a list of vocabulary. There's a bit of a challenge to it again, because students, when they're put into the groups, they also have to say, well, I remember this, I remember that. No, before this, there was that. So they're using the vocabulary a lot. So it's a great activity, even just as a vocabulary activity. But then when they have to put those images into the writing, it becomes a really good way to consolidate it and for them to use these single words in a meaningful context, which is exactly what you want. And of course, you can, if you want, give them a specific kind of writing. So I left it open, but you could also say, okay, I want you to write a poem. I want you to write a newspaper article, whatever kind of writing that you want them to do, but they have to use as many of those words as possible. And of course, the winner is the group who uses the most in a coherent piece of writing. That's very important to tell them. Okay, so well done, everybody. Now, we've seen how giving students a little guidance, so a little bit of input in terms of the vocabulary, can really help them, as well as allow us to revise vocabulary in a very entertaining and interesting manner. Now, we're going to look at another activity which offers students some kind of support, some kind of scaffolding in their writing. Now, this is an activity that I learned from a man called Mike Fleetham, who is an educational consultant and coach based in the United Kingdom. And he has a website called thinkingclassroom.co.uk. Now, this activity involves the whole class working together to write just one single story. The story takes place over a period of 10 days. Now, students are put into pairs or into small groups, and they are assigned one of the 10 days in the story. And they will write the part of the story that happens on the day which is assigned to them. Now, today, we're going to try this out and we're going to use Google Slides. Now, if you don't have technology in your classroom, you can do this simply on pieces of paper with one piece of paper for every day of the story. But as I say, we're going to use Google Slides today, and the presentation, the Google Slides presentation, has a total of 10 slides, one for each day, and each slide has 2 pictures on it to give students a bit of inspiration and a text box where they can write the text to their story. So the slide that you'll see looks something like this. So this is day 9. Now, you'll notice that at the top of this slide, I've put a phrase. Now, what I'm going to ask you to do is to use this particular phrase that is at the top of the slide in the text that you're going to write in the text box. Okay. Now, you'll also see there are the 2 images. So you have to include in some way the words for these 2 images. Okay. Now, this is the interesting part about writing a story as a whole class. You need to look back at the days before. So, for example, if you're doing day 9, you need to look back at day 8, day 7, day 6 to see what those groups are writing and to understand if what you're writing fits in coherently to the story. So you may have to write something and then look back at the previous days, edit it, look at the next day, edit it again. So I'm going to give you a link to the presentation so that you can access it now. Just one moment. Let's put it. Okay, so in the chat, that is the link to access the 10-day story. And I'm going to put you into 10 breakout rooms. Very important that you look, when you go into the breakout room, it tells you which number breakout room you are in. Okay, so it's very important you take a note of that, because if you are in breakout room 1, you need to write on slide 1, day 1 of the story. If you're in breakout room 9, you need to write on day 9, so slide 9 of the presentation. Okay, now I'm going to give you, I'm going to give you 7 minutes. Okay, so not very much time. And we're going to see as a whole group if we can create a 10-day story that makes sense. Okay. So as I say, the link is in the chat box, so make sure you open it before you go to the breakout rooms. And I'm going to set up the breakout rooms now. So remember to look at the number of the breakout room when you go into it. It will tell you. Okay. And here we are. Okay. So it said 7 minutes. Okay. So make sure you've clicked on the link and opened the Google presentation. Remember now to look at the breakout room number and write on the slide that corresponds to that number. Here we go. Okay, so I had to kind of cut you off there, which, we didn't finish the story, but that's okay. With your students, you would give them longer, but hopefully you got an idea how the activity works. And just to kind of show you what was happening. So if you look at this, so this is what, as a teacher, I was watching while you were in the breakout rooms. So I was looking at, oops, let me just get my mouse. Where's it gone? There we are. So I was looking at all your slides. I could see what you were writing. I could comment on it as well. And the good thing is that, you can easily, as a student, go back to look at what the other groups have written. So we can see here day 4 doing really well there. Very good. Okay, so some really great work there. So that's something, as I say, it can work either with a Google Slides presentation or a PowerPoint presentation, or it can work just with paper, maybe the paper stuck around the room, if that's possible for you, so that students have to walk backwards and forwards to see what the other groups are writing. And then at the end, one student can read all of the story. And let me just, go back to my presentation there 1 second. So we'll just close that. Okay. So we can see that from that story, the students really had to think about how to structure the story and how to use the phrases which were at the top. Now, I would normally choose phrases that I know my students might have difficulty with. So, for example, my students have difficulty with the structure that they need to use after they use the word despite. So for example, I include that as one of the words to use. And then they, of course, by looking backwards and forwards and editing and rereading the story, they're practicing these really important skills for writing, which is checking what they've written and then changing it if they need to. And it's also a nice whole class collaborative activity. And they do have that element of guidance as well, but they can still use their imagination. So let's move on now to the next idea. So this is another way to scaffold, to support writing, but also to test students' understanding of grammar structures that you might have practiced. Now, for this one, you will need a pen and paper. If you don't have a pen and paper, you can write in the chat, but don't send the message until you have completed the whole story. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to read you a story. Okay, and part of the story I will read aloud, and other parts of the story I will read in my head. Okay, now you have to imagine the parts that I am reading in my head and write them down. Okay, so I'm going to read now. Listen to what I say, and when I stop, write what you think comes next. Okay, and I will read it twice, so don't worry if you get a bit lost the first time. I'll read it again afterwards. Okay, so here we go. It was a cold, dark day in December, and Michael, despite and never before, and he couldn't believe his eyes. Without a moment of hesitation, but he vowed from that day on that he would never again Okay, so I'm going to read it again now. So remember, you need to fill in the gaps using your imagination. Okay, here we go again. It was a cold, dark day in December, and Michael, despite he and never before, and he couldn't believe his eyes. Without a moment of hesitation, but he vowed from that day on he would never again Okay, so let's see what you have got. So I'm going to read the story again, and this time I want you to type in the chat what could come next. Okay, so type your ideas in the chat. So here we go again. It was a cold, dark day in December, and Michael. So type it in the chat what you think comes next. Was starving. That's great, Habiba. Was excited to be going sledging, was driving his car, went for a walk. Wow, was freezing to death. Yeah, was watching TV and drinking hot chocolate. I like that one, Radina. Okay, great. So despite what comes next? His sickness, good. The cold, the weather. He was sick. A blizzard raging outside. Wow, I love that one. Wearing heavy clothes, that he was drunk, the bad weather despite waking up early. Okay, great. What comes next? Oh, being sick as well. We're still hungry. We've got this hunger theme. Came back home. Decided to walk around the neighborhood, went out, put on his muffler and overcoat and grabbed his new sledge. Wow. Decided to leave. I saw a cat crossing the street. Okay, great. Excellent ideas there. Suddenly, he vomited. Decided to take a nap. Heard the doorbell. Good. Great. And oh, black cat. Snowman. Great ideas. It turned blue. Wow, great. Never before. Oh, brilliant, Nora. Really like that. Such numbing cold, but great language. Have you seen a snowman wave at him in that manner? That Marie. Great. Okay. And he couldn't believe his eyes. Without a moment of hesitation, he told me that he drank. He ran to save the woman. Oh, he quit his job. Such human stupidity. Yes. Decided to grabbed a knife from the kitchen. Ooh. Okay. Decided to run after. Wow, these are great. Turned on the light in all rooms in the house. Ran towards the abominable creature. Okay. Called his mother. Yeah, possibly. Okay. But not surprised at all. He went home. The thief had a gun. She insulted him. He got broke. Wow, these are great. At that point, his friend called him back. He vowed from that day on that he would never again never drink again. Smash it, leave the house. Yes, never again leave the house. Help anyone. Talk to a lady without her permission. Drink hot chocolate at night. Step outside of the house. These are great. Forget his friend had saved his life. Brilliant. These are really, really good. Okay, so thank you so much there. Live alone. Yeah. Drive his car while being drunk. Yes, so he shouldn't, should he? Okay, so thank you so much for that. So this is something that you can also do if you're on Zoom by just pressing the mute button when you want them to complete the gaps. Now, the reason why it can be useful to press the mute button is so that you read the whole story. They can see what you're saying by the movements of your mouth, but they can't hear you. So they can, if you want to, you can try to get them to guess what you're saying in your story as well. So it depends how you want to do it. And also, if you think that's a bit challenging for some of your lower level learners, you might also want to give them the skeleton story, a written skeleton like this. Okay. So you can do it however you want, and you can include or any kind of language. So here with this story, I was working with my students. As I said, they had a problem with using the structure after despite. So I wanted to do something that would get them to practice this test if they'd understood it. And also we had been looking at inversions. So never before had he seen. And I wanted to know, did they really know how to use it? So this gave me that opportunity, and you can make this as long or as short as you like. Okay, now this, if you're interested, this was what my story was, but I think yours was so much better. I really, really do. Now, as I say, I'd looked at inversions. I was also practicing the past continuous as a narrative tense to give background information in the story. Now, the beauty of this activity is that it is partially controlled, but it also allows them to use their creativity. Now, I'm going to just very briefly describe an activity which is based on one that I learnt in a workshop with a legendary teacher trainer, Mario Rinvolucri, about 18 years ago. And it involves a little bit of drawing. Actually, let's try. I think we've got time to quickly try. Okay, so I'm going to open the whiteboard. Okay, so I hope you can see the whiteboard. Okay, if you can see the whiteboard, if you can write something on it using the annotate function. Okay, so you will see that there are some options, view options, and you can see. Thank you, brilliant. Okay, it's working. Excellent. That is great. Okay, so what I'm going to do, thank you for letting me know that is working. That is wonderful. So I'm going to ask you now to just draw a small drawing on the whiteboard of anything you like. Okay, so for example, I might draw, what might I draw? Okay, I might draw a cup of tea. Okay, but you can draw anything you like. So if you're on your phone, you will see that there's a little pen in the left hand corner. If you click on that pen, it will let you annotate on the screen. So just draw anything that you want to draw. Okay. Oh, Marie, I think I can see I can see a couple of animals here. I think we've got Aya and Marie. I think Marie maybe is doing a dog and Aya's doing a cat maybe. Nora's got the sun. That's great. Okay, we've got some lovely flowers as well. I love flowers. Oh, brilliant. So many things here. A mouse, I think, is that as well. Tahib, is that a mouse? And what else have we got? I wonder what Radina's drawing a cube, I think. Okay. I'm sure there's lots of analysis that we could do about the things that you have chosen to draw. Okay, now obviously we're doing it on the digital whiteboard today, but you could also do it on a normal whiteboard or a blackboard, where you ask each student to come up and draw whatever they feel like on the board. Now, when they draw it, I normally ask them as well, once they finish their little drawing, to say why they drew that. So they might say, okay, well, oh, is that an elephant, Aya? That's brilliant. It looks like the back of an elephant, maybe. So I might say, okay, I drew a cup of tea because I would like a cup of tea at the moment. Okay, so they can give whatever reason they want. It is a dog, Marie, because we've got woof. Great, thank you. So they give this reason for writing it. But then once they've done this, you tell them to choose one of the objects on the whiteboard. And it doesn't have to be their own object. They can choose whichever one they want. So they choose an object. Then you put them into small groups. So it could be pairs or groups of 3 or 4. And you tell them that they need to write a dialogue between the objects. So here you might have them writing a dialogue between a cup of tea, a dog, a flower, and is that a dollar maybe? Yeah, so something. So it's very surreal, but they have to write this dialogue imagining what might happen. And the students become so creative. It's true, at first they think it's a bit of a crazy activity, but then it really gets them to use the language, to be really creative. And because it's such a surreal situation, they seem to remember the language more. So I've done this many times. And what I really love as well is that it takes no preparation from the teacher at all. Everything comes from the students. So I really like that activity. And you can do it on the whiteboard on Zoom or on a Jamboard, or as I say, in a traditional classroom, just with the normal whiteboard. Okay, wonderful. So I'm just going to go back now to my presentation. Thank you so much for your drawings. They were wonderful. Okay. Oh, I've stopped sharing. Let me share again. Okay, great. So, as I say, it required no preparation and everything comes from the students. But you can find writing in a lot of things. So, for example, students could write the story based on the lyrics of their favourite song, or they could write a story about their favourite famous person. The key thing is that they get to write about something which interests them. And this brings me on to my next idea. Now, today is not only International Day of Space Travel, it's also DEAR Day, Dear Day, if you like, which is an acronym for Drop Everything and Read. Okay, now you may have heard about this. It's when the teacher tells students to stop doing what they're doing in class. Everybody picks up a book or something to read and reads for individually for 5 minutes. And we can adapt this and make it into a drop everything and write time. So maybe you see your students are a little bit too energetic. Maybe they need a calming activity, or maybe you just have a couple of early finishers from an activity. You don't know what to do with them. So it can be great if a student has a notebook where they can just write for a few minutes about anything that they want. Now, it could be a private journal, or it could be something that you want to check and see what they're writing. Or maybe you can give them a specific task. So something that I gave to a couple of early finishers in my class was to think of a Netflix series that they'd enjoyed watching, write a little summary of it, but not say what the name was. And then when everybody had finished the activity, then they had to read their summary, and the others had to guess what the Netflix series was. And it worked really well because, you know, they're writing about something they're interested in. And then the others have a reason to listen to them. And they're also working on the kind of vocabulary that maybe they need for something like a review. So it's really useful. Okay, and talking about a review, that is a kind of exam task. So we're talking now about how to get students engaged with exam writing. So sometimes students can be a bit bored by exam writing tasks, and they only feel motivated to do the practice about 2 weeks before they have to do an exam. But there are ways to get them interested. So, for example, if the students are preparing for a lower level exam, where, for example, in the Cambridge Key English test, where they have to write a short note to a friend, you can give them the exam task, ask them to write it on a piece of paper, which they then make into a paper plane, and they send it to someone else in the class who has to reply to it and fly it back to them. Now, for some reason, just having that paper plane element makes it just a lot more motivating for them. Now, with higher levels, you can get them to create their own writing task to give to the rest of the class. Or you can also display their writing in a gallery by sticking it up around the room. And then the other students walk around and they write 2 things that they really liked about that piece of writing and 1 suggestion for improvement. And this is something which can also be done well on a Jamboard, with a piece of writing on each frame or each page of the Jamboard, and students adding sticky notes. This is an example that from my students. So the writing in the middle is one of my students' articles, which they agreed that I could share with the class. And then the other students had to read it and write some things that maybe needed improving and some things that they really liked about it. And of course, then you can download that as an image and give it to the student who did the original writing. If you don't have the technology, just as I say, do it with pieces of writing stuck around the room, and the students walk around the gallery and maybe stick post-it notes on or whatever. Okay. And, talking of technology, what I'd like to move on to next, because there are lots of sites which can make writing more engaging for our students. I'm going to skip, I'll come back to number 8 if we have time. So there are some fantastic sites, such as the comic making site. So this is a really good site, Make Beliefs Comics. Great if you're working with teenagers, where students can choose characters for the comic and they can make a comic book online. Also, Book Creator, which has a lot of templates for making books, and students can add text, pictures, and even audio of themselves reading to create a book which they can then share with the rest of the class or with their parents or whoever. And another type of site that I really love are newspaper generators. So here's an example. And I'll put the link as well in the chat box in case you want to use this site. It's got lots of different templates, not just newspapers. And it's very easy because you just click on the bit that you want to edit. So here I've added a photo, I've done a headline. So if we're working on news articles, this is really good. And I sometimes also create these for my students as a lead in to something else. And it's just really, they can use their sense of humor. It's really funny and so on. Also, maybe you can use a Padlet, so you can students can write and then comment on each other's pieces of writing on the Padlet. You can use Google Earth. Students can visit a city and then write about the city. So the list is endless. But don't worry if you don't have access to technology in your classrooms. Okay, I'm going to go back actually to the slide from before, and we're going to try another activity. Okay, so this is another kind of dictation activity. I'm going to read a letter to a friend, but I'm going to make a mistake with some of the words in the letter. Okay, now what you need to do is to listen to me reading the letter, and in the chat, write only the words where I have made a mistake. So I've said the wrong word. So write the word that I say and what you think the correct word should be. Okay, so you can write it in the chat as we're going along. So here we go. Here's my letter. Hi, Jodie. How are you? I'm so pleased to hear that you've taken an interest in reading, and I would be hippo to recommend some good books. Thank you, Renal. Yes, it should be happy, not hippo. I read a great thriller last year, but I can't remember the title now. I also love title. Thank you. I also love science fiction. Are you a saucepan of science fiction too? Fan, yeah, great. The best place to buy books is from your local bookshop. I think it's better than buying things from big washing line shops like Amazon, because it's good to support your local community and speak to people while you buy your books. Online, great. Anyway, I have to grow now because I have an exam at school tomorrow, and I really must study. Yeah. Write soon and let me know which books you have read. Excellent. No. Okay, brilliant. So what this activity does is that first of all, it gives students a model of the kind of writing that we want them to do. So in this case, it was an informal letter to a friend. And they have to listen really carefully to me reading it, processing every word as they try to find the mistakes. So it can be much more powerful than just simply handing them a written model of the writing task. Now, if you want, you can also make mistakes with the words or the strictures that you want them to review. So it really tests their knowledge. And as Hagar said there, boosts their language awareness as well. Okay, so let's go back to, okay, so we saw the newspaper generator there. Phonemic awareness as well, Tahibi. Yes, that is a very good point. Okay, now if you don't like technology, don't forget to use paper too. Studies have shown that students may remember things better if they write them by hand. Now, there are pros and cons to writing with technology or writing with paper. We shouldn't forget that some of our students will have specific learning differences, such as dyslexia or dysgraphia, and writing by hand can be really uncomfortable for them. So technology allows them to put words into writing without any discomfort. On the other hand, for neurotypical students, writing by hand might be a great way to have a digital detox for a while, and it kind of gets rid of the distraction of their, what else is on their phone. So that is all my ideas, but wait, there's no number 10. It doesn't seem right to end on tip number 9, does it? But I haven't got a 10th idea. Well, maybe you have. Has anybody got any other ideas that they would like to share for practicing grammar and vocabulary in writing? If you have, come on the mic if you have an idea that you would like to share, or type it in the chat, whatever you prefer. Has anybody got any ideas they would like to share? Using social media to generate paragraphs? That's a good idea, Nora. I like that. Because social media as well, like, it really, it's something we use all the time. Instagram, yeah, definitely. Post a picture. A writing activity can be ask the students to invent a character. I like that. Yeah. Writing captions. Yes, very important. So these are very realistic ways of writing and things that students do in their own language. So why not do them in English too? Mainor, using audiobooks. Thank you. Inventing facts about them and using the target language. That's always fun, isn't it? Which facts are invented. Movie, yeah. Write your daily journal. Some great ideas here. Thank you. Write a different ending to a movie. I love that one. Yeah. Really good. Okay. Brilliant. Excellent ideas. Thank you so much there. Okay, so we've just about come to the end, and I thought I'd give you a little acronym. M-Man, thank you. Responding to a reading text, students personalize with a character or defend a point of view. Great idea. Also to use the reading as a kind of springboard for the writing. That's really good. Yeah. Okay. And give a picture and ask them to create a story of what they can see in the picture. Yeah, I love using images for writing stories. I think that's a great idea. Thank you. Okay, so yeah, a little acronym, things to remember. Thank you, Tahib, vocab classification. Okay, so when we want to make a piece of writing engaging and we want it to practice what they have learnt, we should treat it as a workout. So I'm talking here like, you go to the gym and you do a physical workout to keep in shape. You need to do the same thing with your grammar and vocabulary, and writing is a great way to do that. So we tell the students, we're going to do a bit of a workout. It sounds a bit more exciting than writing. We need to give them a reason to write. So this is really important. If they don't think that what they're writing matters, they're not going to be motivated to write. So you could give them a reason such as, okay, we're going to share the best one on social media, or we're going to display it during a parents' evening if you've got younger students, or we're actually going to write to a real person. Let's write on this famous person's Twitter account or whatever, okay? So they need to have a reason to motivate them to write. And also, we need to include that element of imagination. Even the students that say, I'm not creative, I've got no imagination, they can work in groups. So maybe you've got one who's very imaginative, another in the group who's very good at the language and the structural aspect. So they can work together. And in fact, T is for togetherness. Writing does not need to be an individual task. It can be collaborative as well. And the students probably enjoy that and they learn from each other too. And finally, it needs engagement. So we need to think, what are my students interested in? And then give them a topic, a piece of writing that can help that. Okay, so we've come to the end. Thank you so much for participating. Your ideas have been brilliant. And thank you, Emma, as well. Thinking technique called What Do You See, Think and Wonder? Brilliant. I love that. Yes, I can also share the presentation. Was it a particular slide that you wanted to take a screenshot of? Let me know if it was, because I can go back to that particular slide if you want. Okay, so Samara, let me know if there was a particular slide and I'll go back to it. And I will also send Abir a PDF of the slides as well, so you can have a copy of that. In fact, maybe I can do it now just to, oops, let me do a PDF now, and I can, oops, just one moment. Okay. Okay. Let's see, I'm just going to try and do it while we speak. Is it done? Okay. Oops. Okay, so I'm going to share it in the chat. I think I have got it now. So I'll put the PDF in the chat box so that you can access it now. Oops. One moment. Oh, can I? Okay. Okay, so you should in a moment be able to see the chat. In the chat, there's a PDF. of the slides. So you should be able to download that, and that's got a copy there of all the slides. Okay. Okay, what I'll do, Tahib, is I'm going to send that to Abia, and then she can pass that on to you as well. So I'll email that to her. Okay, so thank you everybody for being brilliant participants. I hope some of the ideas were useful, and yeah, Samart, feel free to email me as well. That's absolutely fine. I'll put my email in the chat box as well. Oops. A moment. Okay, that's my email there in case you need the slides, and I'll email them back to you. Okay. Okay, thanks, Marie, for your message. I saw that too. Great. Okay, so over to Dalia. Are you there?
Well, thank you so much, Lucy. It was very beneficial. So thank you very much, and thank you for your time. Thank you.
Sorry, Dalia. Yes, if you want a group photo. Just got 3 of us for the photos. But we're 3 great participants. Okay, have you got it, Dalia? Is that okay? Renal's got the helper. Hello. Okay. Okay. So lovely to meet you all. Bye bye. Enjoy the rest of your day. Good luck with the rest of Ramadan. And yeah, bye bye.